What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Mike Check podcast. I would say that this is the start of season two. I mean, we've been doing it for about a year now. We took some time off just due to us being busy and just the season ending. But this is our first episode back, and we're gonna try getting back in the groove of things. So joining me as always is Sam. Sam, how have you been, buddy?
Been good. Nice summer off. Missing hockey a ton, but looking forward to the start of next year too.
Yeah, it's so funny because like every time this point of the year, like August to September comes,
Mhm.
you just start getting the itch that much more because it's so close. We're
Oh yeah.
so close to the season, and not even the season, just like training camp, watching all these prospects come into the league
Mhm.
and seeing if they're going to make and crack an NHL roster. So it's really just that point of the time a point of that time of the year where you're just really itching just to see them lace it up and at least skate.
Absolutely.
But that being said, we did have the season end a little while back, and we didn't really do a recap of the Stanley Cup final.
Mhm.
But ultimately, the Vegas Golden Knights, they are your Stanley Cup champions. Well deserved. They did put together a really good team with the off season before the season, making some good trades also too that helped them out. And it seemed like a team that had such a hot start when they first came into the league. It took them, they said about 5 years that they would be here, and surely enough,
Yes, sir.
they got it done. So congrats to the Vegas Golden Knights. What were your thoughts of the series? You being a Florida Panthers fan, just give us your input on it.
I think that throughout the playoffs, what was the biggest lesson you could take away from this playoffs was the more adaptable team wins,
Yeah.
right? And through the first three rounds, the Panthers were by far the most adaptable team versus any of the teams they played in the Eastern Conference. And that changed once they got to the finals because Vegas knew how to play every which way. They had depth, they had strong defense, and they were just able to shut down what the Panthers loved, which was attacking on the forecheck, quick zone exits, and just grinding away for those gritty goals. And Vegas countered that by taking with their aggressive forecheck, just taking that away and having a strong counterattack and scoring a lot of goals on the rush, to be honest. And that's what I really saw was probably the biggest deal for the Panthers. That's what they had big
Yeah.
to work on.
Yeah. And I just think that series was just so hard for both teams. And it really did to me, even though some of the games seem kind of lopsided. All it takes is a couple of plays,
Mhm.
and it comes down to who you have on your team, who your leaders are, and for me, I look at Stone and just what a phenomenal job he did throughout the entire playoffs of hyping that team up. He brought the emotion, and it took ease off of guys like Jack Eichel, Marchessault, who was your MVP, and for them to kind of take it off at ease,
Mhm.
that's phenomenal when it comes down to the final series. And I think that's just where they took over. Where I think the Panthers, they're such a strong team, really good goaltender, have some really good top six forwards in there to take over games.
Yeah.
I just think at the end of the day, it really came down for me just Vegas being in the cup 5 years ago, losing to the Washington Capitals. I think that stung for some of those original guys there, those three original guys, and seeing them really want it that bad.
Mhm.
I think that's the determining factor. And now I think this is honestly a really good place for Florida, though, because I think within the next 4 years, they will have another legitimate shot of winning the cup. So,
Yeah.
and on top of that, you're going to have guys that were on this team last year still there, and they're going to want it that much more. So,
Yeah.
bright
Absolutely.
future for Florida. Same thing with Vegas until they get in trouble with the cap down the road. But I thought it was a great series overall. Good way to end of the year.
It was. It was a great end to the year. Just I had so much competition on both ends, despite it being only what 5 games. I think
Yeah,
each game was really tough. Looked competitive throughout, and yeah, like you said, Vegas. The experience showed through, definitely.
Yeah.
And for Florida, you just gotta learn your lessons and move on. But definitely, what they've realized is they have the players to build around. Right, Kachuk and Barkov can get you there when they need to, and that's the most important thing.
Yeah, and I know we talked about it a lot too, and I'll just mention this real quick. I think it's great now that you're going to mention those two guys, Barkov and Kachuk, rather than Barkov and Huberdeau, who's a little bit
Yeah.
older at the time. I think that's a great way to go forward in your championship chase, rather than having Huberdeau there and having those guys get older and older and older. So I think having the one young guy there who, in my opinion, outside of McDavid, is the MVP of the league. I think bright things. But anyways, that caps off the 2022-23 season. And then obviously we had some time off, and then we hit to the NHL draft. Well, actually, before that, we had the lottery. And my goodness, I mean, Chicago. They are, yeah, they struggled for like what, 2 years here, and now they're rewarded with the first overall pick, winning the lottery. This is just crazy to me, man. Them getting another first overall pick, and especially a guy who seems like he is going to come into this league and really just take it over. And people are talking about how he could be the next level generation, that almost like Connor McDavid was. I'm not saying he's going to be a Connor McDavid, but he will have the same skills and the ability to be great in this league. What were your thoughts when you saw Chicago win the lottery?
Yeah, I mean, with Connor Bedard, it remains to be seen if this guy is more like, the Sidney Crosby, Connor McDavid level #1 overall pick, or more like.
I mean, when you're getting compared to those two guys,
I know it's early. The hype is there, but
yeah,
who knows? So with Chicago, I think it's a good fit just from the standpoint of they're starting from zero, right? When they draft Bedard, they don't have to work him in with any other pieces, right? They don't have anything else long term. All they have now is Bedard, and they traded for Taylor Hall to give him a winger to have, which is interesting, definitely. But I think long term, what's going to be good is this team. It's going to be hard for them to manage losing with Bedard, in the sense that they're not going to be good enough to compete. And you don't want to instill some bad habits in him early in his career, but they're going to be able long term to put in through the draft the right pieces around him.
Yeah, I agree. This obviously will not be a turnaround overnight for Chicago. They're still going to go through some tough years to come through, but just getting that player in Bedard, I personally think Chicago's in a good place, because since they when if you look back when they had Kane and Taves like early in their career, they just they reinstated that Chicago is a place to be in the NHL, and I feel like obviously those guys got older. Kane was shipped out. Taves, I forget, did he get shipped out yet, or is he still?
He's a free agent still.
He's a free agent still, so he won't end up back in Chicago. But I think there's so much promise here for this organization, and the fact that they won't have to worry on getting free agents to go there with this young stud coming up in the league. And, already making a trade like for Taylor Hall, like you mentioned, that's going to be another key piece there. I would suspect maybe 2 more years of, just slightly below average hockey from this club. After that, I mean, they could make the appropriate trades and really turn the program around. So, like I said, I think Chicago is just really getting lucky here.
Yeah, it's absolutely one of the best hockey markets in the National Hockey League, right? They're an original 6 team in a huge city that when that team is good, that fan base is rabid.
Yeah.
And so it's going to be exciting if they're able to do that. And I hope they are, just for the sake of having that team be good and having Connor Bedard be a franchise player. So it's going to be interesting to see. I do wonder how they draft later on in the draft. That's going to be the key, right? Because you look at the old Chicago teams, you got Duncan Keith in the second round, you got Brent Seabrook with a late pick, and that's how they're able to round out their top picks of Patrick Kane and Jonathan Toews. So that's what I'm going to be looking for mostly, besides nailing those number 1 overall picks, because that's the easy part.
Yeah, I agree. Going into the draft a little bit more, one thing I'm starting to notice, and we talked about this a little bit too, privately, you and me. It seems like we're getting into this new day and age where scouts decide to take the bigger player with less skill, shown throughout their juniors or college, whatever they've done so far. It seems like they're going to take a guy who's bigger with less skill over a smaller individual who is breaking records, whatever it may be. It's almost like, I mean, for me, I'll make the comparison to Tage Thompson, right? It seems like people want to go out there. Most organizations want to go and get an individual who has the size of a Tage Thompson and want to work with said individual. I remember growing up, you would just see the best skilled player taken, no matter the size, height, weight, age too. That did not matter. Are you starting to see, like, notice a difference in the way that clubs are drafting these young kids, and the fact that maybe they're not taking the most productive or statistically the best player, and they just go for the size to hope that they can turn into great players down the road?
I think it's funny you bring that up. It reminds me a lot of just general managers in football too,
Yeah.
believing in their developmental program more than believing in the player. And so you get the coach in there, you get, the player development leader in there, and you see a guy with this big frame and all these athletic gifts. You think we can make him anything we want, right?
Yeah.
You see the ceiling and you're enamored by it. And I think another thing that brought that on, especially this year in the draft, was Matthew Tkachuk's amazing campaign, was having a guy with that big frame just being a menace on the ice all the time. And when I look at that, I think this is a test of your player development program. Because if you're able to instill these guys with the skills, even if they haven't shown it at the junior levels, and you're able to transform them into good players, then you have a good franchise and you have something that's really, really exciting and sustainable for the future, and you can have sustainable growth because you're passing on, at the very least, a skilled player, a sure thing, even if it's not, the ceiling isn't as high because they don't have all the physical gifts. They still are good players, even like right off the bat, they're good. And so when I look at teams that draft for size rather than draft for skill, I look to see how those teams fare in their player development a few years from now. I look at a team like Philadelphia that has not had a great track record, but I really do believe in the tough, gritty players. And so for them, drafting players with that build rather than that skill, it's not working out for them. And you can see they have been kind of stuck in a rut for a while now. And to me, I mean, I don't know about you. My philosophy is always go with the skill and they'll figure it out. But it's interesting to see how that shifts because I think it comes in waves. And right now we're in definitely a wave where general managers are valuing size.
Yeah, and it's funny you bring like the football aspect into it because I mean I'll go with my hometown boys again. I mean let's be real. When like a guy like Josh Allen, when he was selected
Perfect
in
example.
the NFL,
Perfect.
everybody's like, why would you do that? His accuracy is terrible. He's not fast. He's not this. Look at him now. And another guy I'll throw at it, a quarterback this year that could be amazing could be Richardson for the Indianapolis Colts. Dude is just a mammoth. He's an athlete, right?
Yeah.
But same thing, accuracy, all that stuff. And I look at the same thing in the NHL now, though, too. Whatever the build is, I think people are going to look at centers and wingers, and they want them to be 6'2", 6'4", whatever it can be. And if they don't have the speed, like that, or the speed, the skill, accuracy, whatever it may be, throughout their junior college careers, whatever it is, I think a lot of these GMs are now just believing we need to take the size, not necessarily to be tough, but just because of the way the game is played now.
Mhm.
Because at the end of the day, we're still not outside of the playoffs. If you look at the regular season, yeah, it's still degrading in the physicality department,
Yeah.
at least to what we grew up watching. So it's not like you're going out and being like, oh, I need to go get this 6'3" winger that will bulk up in 3 years just so he can go out there and, make great hits, play defensive hockey. Look at some of these big guys in the league now that look like ballerinas when they're out on the ice. It's absolutely insane the way that
Mhm.
they get the power, and it does take time. For a lot of these big guys, it doesn't happen in one season. I think it happens a lot faster for some of these smaller individuals out there. A guy I'll mention is like Jack Hughes. I mean, he's not huge by any means,
Definitely not.
but he's just got the skill, so he's ready to go.
Yeah.
But with these bigger individuals, I think if teams start to take it serious and be like, we just need to let him develop, I think that's a way to go. Because if you get that size and then you get someone who can play up to the speed in this day and age of hockey, that's a steal, an
Yeah.
absolute steal in the draft.
Absolutely.
So I think it's just really interesting. Just seeing that size being taken early, at least just from the center and winger position. Obviously, we've seen this with defensemen; they've always been bigger individuals, and that's what you rely on. But even now, it seems it's almost kind of like flip flopping a little bit. The defensemen may be a little bit smaller now because they
Mhm.
want the speed and want them to be able to jump up into the rush, but they want their bigger bodies at center and the wing position, but want them to develop the skill over 3 years or at least their rookie contract.
Yeah, and you see that. I think Tage Thompson is probably the perfect example of this. A guy who was throwing in the Ryan O'Reilly trade, right?
Yeah.
Just a prospect to have. No one thought he'd be anything like what he'd become. And it was just about patience and letting him develop into that body and letting him develop the skills later on. And so when you're drafting, you have to keep that in mind, right? You're drafting these kids at 18.
Yeah.
They're not going to be ready yet.
No.
And
No.
if you're waiting at all, I guess you're kind of waiting for the bigger prize rather than the smaller prize. So I guess that's sort of the mindset. And I think if you look at the playoffs, the teams that last are the teams that aren't injured, not
Yeah.
just that they're good, they're healthy. And it's tough to stay healthy when you're dealing with guys hitting you that are not twice your size, but much, much bigger than you. I saw that with the Panthers. We lost so many dudes to injury. I think of Eetu Luostarinen down, and I mean the laundry list of guys like Montour was dealing with injuries. Kachuk was dealing with injuries by the end. Ekblad, and Vegas really wasn't, right? Vegas was really healthy, and sure, a lot of that's luck, but a lot of that's just they had a lot of bigger players.
Yeah.
Look at their defense: McNabb and Martinez and Pietrangelo, huge defensemen that just they managed to stay healthy, and that was a huge part of their win.
Yeah, and even the year before when Colorado won the cup, same story. They even though like you look at their star player McKinnon, he's not like tall, like super
Pretty big.
tall compared to most people, but man, I mean, he's been in the league for a while now, so he's got his full NHL muscle on him and that big, thick body that you need to take the hits throughout these hard series. That's the reason, so that is so key. I'm happy you brought that point up. Real quick, just any shockers from the draft though, outside of us taking the number one with Connor Bedard to Chicago.
I think Matvey Michkov falling to 7. That's going to look back as one of the biggest mistakes for a lot of these teams, because I know a lot of teams were afraid to draft him because he has 4 years left in the KHL on his contract. But he's the second best player in this draft, and it's not really all that close. Like, he's that good. And so I think a lot of teams are going to regret passing on him. And good for Philadelphia for taking that chance and realizing we're not going to be good right away. Let us get this guy who's going to help us be good 4 years from now. That's going to be fine. And one of the shocks, I think, was probably David Reinbacher going 5th overall to Montreal. I don't think he was on anyone's board. And Dmitry Samashev going 6th to Arizona. Also, I don't think was on anyone's board. So 2 reaches with defensemen, I think were very interesting there.
So let me ask you this, though. Do you think this is more of just desperation and depth that they needed to take that player? Or do you think that these GMs just see something in these kids where it's like, no, this is going to pan out. It's not necessarily we just need to take the position for depth. Like we trust this kid. We see something that nobody else sees, obviously. Like, what do you think for a club like Arizona that's going through a lot of trouble right now? What do you think is the overall end of the journey for them taking this pick?
I think I'm sort of on board with it in a weird way. In the sense that you're a team in Arizona that has been in the gutter for so long.
Yeah.
Maybe it's time to start building some trust within the organization, right? Letting your player development and your scouts make the decisions on guys that they believe to be correct. I think that's good process, honestly. Even if maybe it doesn't work out, right? Maybe they thought they saw something and that no one else saw, and it just isn't that, right? But I think giving them the trust is good process, because at the very least, other scouts will see that maybe you took the guy they wanted, and you can attract some better scout talent that way.
Yeah, I can see that's a valid point. I can definitely see that being the idea that they want to go with going forward. I don't know. It's just, for me, it comes down to I mean, most teams that have just struggled for so long, there is a breaking point, right? Where they try so many different things, whether it's in the draft, free agency, whatever it may be, that it's just not working for you. So what do you do at that point?
Yeah.
You have to shut it down. You have to break everything up and just be like, guys, this is a 6-year rebuild. Like, it's the best thing for the franchise going forward. Yeah, it's scary because we're most likely gonna have to move our team and whatnot. But for everybody out there that want to keep their jobs, whatever it is, yeah, you got to shut it down and be like, okay, we need to start from scratch. I don't care if it's the 6th pick, the 18th pick, whoever that pick is in that first round of this new, era for them. That is going to be our future down the road, and that is going to be our leaders down the road. Once they get into their prime, then at that point, you're going to rely on your rookies that you draft and your other free agents to come in and be like, okay, this is our time frame, not only just to turn around your program, but just to convince the league that, yeah, we are serious about what we're trying to do here.
Absolutely.
So, I and for a team that I really love, I mean, I love Arizona. I mean, it's so sad to see what they're going through, and I do have a little, love for them in my heart, and I want to see them put it together. Even if they make the playoffs, like in 4 years, I would be so happy, so happy. I don't think it's going to happen, but I think it's just a really interesting point to bring up there. And then I really want to get your opinion. We talked about this on the side. You texted me. My Buffalo Sabres took Benson. What you said? Steal. Now, if I recall, you texted me and said steal, and then I gave you my reasoning. So I'll give you my reasonings real quick. Sabres are on the verge of, potentially being back in the NHL as a competitor for the wild card. And with all the transitions that they've had since they've put Kevin Adams at GM and Don Granato at head coach, it seems like they have a legitimate chance to be a team to sneak into a playoffs and then make runs at getting far in the playoffs. Not saying making a cup final, not saying winning a cup, whatever it may be. Just because of the skill they have and how young this organization is. I think that's phenomenal. So great job. We finally have the office that is going to take care of this organization going forward. The only thing they lack, though, is what we were talking about earlier, is size, in my opinion. Because down the road, your top big men are going to be Tage Thompson, Alex Tuch, I mean, I don't really think Jordan Greenway will be around and that productive of a player down the road. And you sure don't want Owen Power and Rasmus Dahlin to be using their big bodies for, the reasons that we had been talking about prior. They go out and take Benson, who fell. He did
Yeah.
fall compared to, or at least from what everybody said. So for
Mhm.
me, I'm looking at all these high centers and wingers that are just huge bodies, just huge bodies. And to mention real quick, the Sabres have an unbelievable depth in their prospects right now. It is probably one of the highest prize prospect team in the league right now with Savoy, Levy at goaltender. The list goes on and on and on with these young players that will soon be in the NHL and ready to make their impact on the league. And I think they will do it successfully. They take Bennett, which is a very skillful individual, but
Yes.
man, is he a shrimpy. He's a shrimpy. I will say. Nothing against the short guys out there, but it just doesn't fit the overall look I see for a team that ultimately wants to get to a cup final. They don't.
Mhm.
It's not a player that's going to be so sizable, and I think he might be. Yeah, he might be a good player, but is he going to get banged up? Are we going to see that happen like we were talking about earlier? What are your thoughts?
Well, I look at the Sabres organization and I say, okay, you're down the middle, you're set, right? Thompson and
Tuck, Skinner, or Cousins?
Cousins, yes.
Yeah,
Thompson and Cousins, 1-2, you're good. Defense, you're good with high end skill. Obviously, you always want depth defense, but you can find those. You have your top guys in Darlene and Power. Goaltender, it's iffy, but there wasn't a good goaltender in that spot anyway, and you have enough trust in Levy
yeah.
to rely on that, not necessarily take goaltender. Winger, I don't really see in that system the guy. I don't see a guy that can be a true left winger for either Thompson or Cousins. You have Skinner, a little older. You have Tuck, good player, more of a middle six guy. And so I see Benson. I think, okay, well, this is a guy that can be a top line. He has the skill to be a top line winger for you guys. He can be on Thompson's left side, 4 years from now for the next decade, right? I mean, you look at just some of these guys. I think he's tearing up the WHL. He's at almost 100 points in 60 games in the WHL at age 18. Great look there. And then who was left? You could have taken Ryan Leonard. The bigger body definitely went to Nashville, but definitely not as skilled, definitely not as polished offensively. And so I think at that spot, that's a guy that fell, and that was definitely the best winger available. So for me, I think it was also a position of need and the guy that probably should have made it to 13. So I'd be very happy if I was Buffalo.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm excited for him to step in when he does many years from now, and be a point getter, capitalizer based off of who's centering, him. If it's Thompson, Cousins, Middlestat, whoever it is.
Mhm.
But like I said, I'm thinking big picture. I just think a set individual. I hope he proves me wrong, but I just want to see that he's not just going to be your regular season guy. I don't want to start. I don't want the Sabres basically to take the Toronto Maple Leafs route. You know what I'm saying? And just become that dominant regular season team and not do anything with it.
No,
Right.
you don't.
Um,
I don't think you guys are that. I mean, Tage Thompson is not that. He's not Austin
which
Matthews or John
the
Savard.
best thing about it though too is like I mentioned earlier, and we talked about a little bit earlier, was how now that Adams and Granato are there, it's you look at their star players. They're all from trades and drafts that were, thrown in there. Tage Thompson was thrown in there.
Yeah, got it
They
out the
took
mud.
they were like, yeah, Jeff Skinner, you gave us 1 year of 40 goals that first year. We'll sign you to a $9 million contract. Like, it's ridiculous, but like at the same time, it's yeah, we're gonna do this for you. You're gonna be here for a long time. You're gonna help us get over the hump and turn it around. But other than that, it's literally the future still. I mean, Dylan Cousins too. I mean, they signed him to a 7-year deal, which will be a steal, money wise in the next couple of years. You'll see that.
Probably.
But yeah, most of their guys on the ice are guys that they drafted. And if they did not draft them, they were, pieces in a trade that weren't necessarily like the top piece of the trade. I mean, another guy, Peyton Krebs, he's going to be a solid fourth liner on your team for years to come. So I think getting that culture change is huge. So I love that. I'm just hoping with all the prospects they have down the road that it's not necessarily going to be, just the stereotypical, they're short guys. They won't be able to last when it comes to the big games and the big series. So that's the only really, down part I have of their draft this season. But other than that, I hope, like I said, I hope Benson proves me wrong. I know he's been highly talked about. He's a very skillful individual. Doesn't seem right now very fast and, very powerful in his skating, but that can get developed like we talked about earlier too.
Mhm.
So, yeah, we'll see what happens there. Anything else on the draft?
Ryan Leonard to Washington was intriguing, but also to Nashville, the guy we were talking about, I also really liked.
Yeah. So Matthew, what are you talking about?
Yes, Matthew Wood. That's who I'm thinking of.
Yeah, the guy from Connecticut, right?
Yeah, do like
Yeah.
that for them.
I mean, look, once again, I mean, he's 6'4", 6'4", almost 200 pounds. Like, I think he's the highest Connecticut player ever taken.
Yeah.
In the draft too. I mean, good. I mean, not that it's a very old program there, but it's interesting. I think the draft being in Nashville, it caught him by surprise too. When they called his name, everybody was like, huh? What? Who'd we take? But I think we're just in this new day and age of hockey where we're going to see these types of picks early in the first round, and they just want them to pan out over time.
Yeah, definitely. And, I think I still don't get what Arizona's doing, but, the draft's a crapshoot. And if you like a guy, I'm proud of them for not caring about optics. But
Yeah.
even at 12 is weird.
Yeah. Well, that will wrap up the NHL draft there. What topic do you want to go to next?
Go to the trade.
Let's go to the trade. The trade of trades. Erik Karlsson is now a Pittsburgh Penguin. Can you believe it? When I saw this, I thought of one thing and one thing only. And this is basically my take on the whole entire trade. This is a thank you to Crosby. This is strictly a thank you to Crosby. They're in no position to go forward and, win a cup, in my opinion. They don't have a goaltender. They don't have
Like Jari?
no.
Okay.
No. They just don't have the depth that they used to. Adding Karlsson, is this really going to make the difference in you getting back into the playoffs now because they missed it this past year? And with all the talent in the East, I just don't see them being successful going through the gauntlet of the East and trying to get to a conference final. I literally think this is just a thank you to Sidney Crosby. Like, we'll make it competitive for you until you're officially done. We're going to just be that team that fights to make the playoffs and hopefully to win a series.
Yeah, I think that's a fair take. I mean, you have Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin. You kind of have to make a pledge, a commitment to at least competing, right? You can't bottom out with those guys. It'd be unfair to them. It'd be unfair to the league to not have to see those guys in competition. And this trade, I think, definitely makes them better. They didn't give up a whole lot. Definitely not a lot of roster players. They gave up Petrie. I think Petrie went to Montreal on this, but overall, it really wasn't much. And that power play is going to be extremely, extremely lethal, right? Because you have, Gensel, Malkin, Crosby with Karlsson at the point is so exciting. I'm just like, my mind is wrapping thinking of the possibilities of what they can do on the power play together. And, I still don't think it fixes their biggest problem. Like you said, they they give up too many chances. And Erik Karlsson, as great as he is, gives up a lot of chances also. But I think you're right. This is them borrowing against their future again, because this is now the fourth player they have on their books that's due a lot of money at an age where not a lot of players are very good. And so I wonder how it looks, 4 years from now. This year will be exciting. They'll probably be better and they'll probably make the playoffs, I think, after a down year. But 4 years from now, it might get ugly.
Yeah, it'll get ugly. This is not going to last very long. But I mean, there's not much I can say here. Even if it is successful, like you talk about their power play and how it's should be lethal, going forward. That's great and all, but what does this mean for the overall organization of the Pittsburgh Penguins? Like, do you honestly think, with all the moves that you are making, unless you get some other moves and some serious steals of good talent going to Pittsburgh, is this really going to get you to a conference final? Do you honestly see the Pittsburgh Penguins in the conference final ever?
Not in this Eastern Conference. There's no way.
Exactly. So basically, like I said, to sum it up, it's just a thank you. It's a thank you, and it's going to keep the fans going to games. It'll keep them interested. But other than that, really, really nothing too crazy. But the one thing I did want to mention too is the other parts of the trade. You get Grenland, Hoffman, and Ruda going to San Jose. In a first round pick, do you see that being impactful for that organization?
San Jose should feel bad, man. I mean, I know he's older and the contract is rough, but you absorb $1.5 million, and this is a Norris Trophy winning defenseman. He won the Norris this year, right? How do you get a top 10 protected first and no good prospect, just salary cap filler, in return for this? That's just not good enough. And I know he's 33, 11.5 million. Now it's down to 10 for Pittsburgh. It's a lot of money, but he's also you must have gotten a better offer from somewhere else.
Yeah, I could see that. I think the thing that sucks is that they didn't trade Karlsson at the deadline. I think that probably, I almost guarantee there was probably a better trade locked in at that time. And, as you continue to talk about trades and propose trades with a certain individual, it's never going to get higher, right? After a certain period of time, it will go down low. And for San Jose, I mean, they're slowly becoming like the Coyotes. You know what I'm saying? You hate to see it, but that's just ultimately what's happening right now.
No, you're not wrong, because, I mean, nothing inspires confidence. You trade, think about the players they had that they traded, and what do you feel good about them getting back, right? Timo Meier, they got a first and a second that could be a first. Erik Karlsson, you get another first. And these are not good firsts, right? These are middle to late first round at best. And what are you gaining? What's something solid you can feel you gained from getting rid of these really talented players? Not much. You still have the prospect pool. And no good players on the current roster. I mean, you're just trying to untangle a huge cap mess, essentially.
Well, and I'll mention too, for me, even with all these selections they're getting in the first round, if they were to go the route of changing the program around by getting these high picks and getting rid of these players, they don't have the front office to change the culture and really invest in these young kids. At least I don't think so. I don't think they have that yet. So if you don't have the front office to help support these young kids that you're going to be drafting, what's the point?
Yeah, you're right. They don't have any solid infrastructure. It just, right now, you got to give them credit for trying to untangle the mess that was left over from the 2017 Cup run. Because you get rid of Burns, you get rid of Pavelski, you lose Marleau to retirement. All these guys are gone. you wish you had more to show for it, and
Yeah,
something in the prospect pool also.
I agree. And then the last part of
Montreal.
Montreal,
Mhm.
getting Petrie and DeSmith, the main pieces in there, and then another player and a second round pick in
Yeah,
the 20. I think it was 20. Is it 24 or is it 25? I
I think
think
25.
25. Yeah. Does this do anything for Montreal?
I gotta say, I love what Montreal is doing here.
I agree.
Ever since Kent Hughes took over, they've been a forward-thinking organization. They've been proactive, and they've done a great job just acquiring assets on the cheap. This is another great example, right? You give up Mike Hoffman just to make cap work, just to make the money work, and you get back Jeff Petrie, so a player that was on their roster, a fan favorite, who, I mean, you take on a little bit more money, just another million and a half more, and you get a free second round pick and a good backup goalie.
Yeah,
So you
that
get some stability in net, and you get just another asset to help you out for essentially nothing. I mean, that's just really good business. And Ken Hughes, I mean, when he took over, Montreal was in a rough spot, and you could just see what they're doing. They're building up a really, really promising future.
Yeah, and I like that they're not jumping on other free agents right now,
Mm-hmm. No,
and they're not overdoing it. They're
100%.
going to take their time with it. They're in a good place to do what they're doing right now,
Mm-hmm.
and I like the one thing that I'm love for them is getting DeSmith as a backup. I
Mm-hmm.
think that is so huge, and at the end of the day, I think it's really beneficial for this club going forward. I think great things will come out of it for sure.
I agree. Just keep developing, being patient. They're going to be good very soon.
Yeah, yeah. What is let's get into the last topic then, buddy. We got one more today. I know you wanted to introduce this one because it's a pretty interesting topic and I really do like it.
Yeah, sure. So when with the Erik Karlsson trade, what I really, really wanted to dive into, what I thought was so interesting was what do defensemen have to do to be good in the modern NHL? Right? Because, you know, there's so many different ways for a defenseman to be these days. And nothing ever seems to be exactly what a team needs and a team wants. And so what I want to discuss really is just how the game is changing for a position that theoretically shouldn't score a lot of points, but almost kind of has to stay relevant.
Yeah. I'll just make it short and sweet. I think realistically, you look at this new day and age, and I think we've seen such a shift in the bigger bodies needing at least they used to be for defensemen. You needed big bodies for defensemen all the time. Nowadays, I think you really look over and I think it's going right to the centers and wingers like we talked about. I
Mm-hmm.
think that's where you need that at your blue line, you need that at your, center ice, whatever it may be. That's your main force.
Mm-hmm.
And realistically, when you're going on offensive rushes, those big bodies are going to be jumping through, taking the puck themselves. And what does that leave? It leads the defenseman open to go make plays.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't think you need the big, sluggish, bodied defensemen nowadays. They need to be on their feet, constantly ready to jump into play. I think defenseman is the most important position in the game nowadays,
Yeah.
outside of center, outside of goaltending. I think that is the most important position because they are running all sides of the ice. They are an everything player now. I don't even think it's safe to call them a defenseman nowadays,
Yeah.
because they are really, really. You look at the good teams; their defensemen are the ones who are making these chances, these goals happen.
Mm-hmm.
I look at one guy in particularly. You look at why am I blanking on his name? Colorado, Makar. Like he is the sole definition of this day and age of
Yeah.
defenseman.
Mm-hmm.
The man is not huge by any means.
Mm-hmm.
He is basically a forward in the back end. But man, when it comes down to making a defensive play, it's not necessarily let's take him out with my body. I will be able to catch up to him with my speed. My skill will be able to lift his stick, move him, pinch him out, whatever it may be. That is what you see now.
Yeah. And Makar is an interesting example because I think we can agree that the future of this sport is positionless. You
Yeah.
know, we're not there yet, definitely not. But I think Makar is the first real iteration of this is a defenseman who can play forward.
Yeah.
Genuinely. And when we get
It's basically like having a bunch of Christian McCaffreys on,
exactly.
your NFL team. I mean,
Mhm.
is he a fullback? Is he a running back, a wide receiver, a quarterback? Who knows?
It doesn't matter because
Yeah.
they can do whatever. You can slot them in whenever. And you know, right now when we're in that transitionary period between big, scary defensemen who are here to just be physical and to generate offense on their own, he's sort of the interesting blueprint. But in this period, I think you're right. Mobility is the number one thing that's important, right? If you're an immobile, slow defenseman, you're going to get exposed. It's just too easy to find someone with speed to just attack you, and it's not going to work because defending the goal is still the number one priority.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think another good individual you can mention that really just is the perfect example is Charlie McAvoy, right? I mean,
Great.
look at him, look at his physique, but look at how he plays the game. I mean, that man, when he needs to make a defensive stand, he's there.
Doesn't
He
put
is
up a lot of points either.
he is phenomenal when it comes to being the definition of a defenseman, but also at the same time is just so skilled enough to be able to jump up into the play and not necessarily just go for it all. Like you get a lot of these defensemen now that are on some bad teams that are like, oh, the upside of us taking him or getting him is he's going to be able to jump up in the offensive zone. But sometimes they overdo it and they're not able to get back. Charlie McAvoy, Cale Makar are those players that can do it all.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, absolutely. And I think of someone like Brennan Montour, who early in his career was that guy making all the plays but not getting back on defense. And he's developed into a player that can get back very quickly and still be strong in his own end. Another guy I like to think about is Jacob Slavin, who shut down defenseman, will not score on him, but he's also not scoring a ton either. He's just simple hockey. Get the puck, make a good pass out of the zone, we're moving on. Get the puck, good pass out of the zone, shut down, moving on. And that's fine too, right? That doesn't do anything but good things for your hockey team, right? It doesn't create a weakness. It doesn't slow down your offense because you just let your centers and your forwards generate it. You need guys like that. It's an unselfish type of play that doesn't get up a lot of points, but anyone with any sense knows that's a winning hockey player.
Yeah, and one other thing I'll mention real quick, just to end it off here. I think really nowadays too, they're the individuals where if you're in your own zone, you're getting pinched for about a minute 20 seconds. You're in your own zone. You need to get it out. Most guys, or at least what we saw, these bigger guys would just be like, let me get the puck, I'm going to throw it down the ice and ice it. Yeah. Nowadays, these guys can gain the puck, make it look like they're about to rush, settle down. Settle down, regroup, and just like, okay, guys, I've got this. I can move it. I can change the momentum like that in our own zone, and that's so key when you have that confidence from a player, and then for them to jump up into the rush. I think that's what you're looking at nowadays because, like I said, it would always be let me just jab my stick along the boards if someone's pinning, and then hopefully it pops out. Now these guys go to grab it and they go to take it behind their own net or even in front of their net. They're so confident.
Yeah, absolutely. Players who used to go for hits, that used to be their main game, they still exist, right?
Yeah.
They could still be effective. I think of Radko Gudas as one of the premier examples on the Florida Panthers, a player whose main game still is hitting and still is being a force, but is still strong enough to move and be defensively responsible and make a good pass out of the zone. Doesn't put up a lot of points, doesn't get huge minutes either, but he's reliable, and that's important.
I agree. Well, I think that's going to wrap it up for our first episode of season 2. We'll put it as. It was really good to see you again, Sam, and we're going to be getting back into the groove of getting these episodes out for you guys. So thanks for listening. We'll see you guys next time. All right.
See you guys.